can you spot passive-aggressive language patterns? Keep watching. This is Life Mastery Gym. I'm Damon, and I teach people just like you cutting-edge NLP processes and techniques so that you can master your life and take charge of your destiny. So if that sounds good, make sure you click that subscribe button right down here so you can get these videos on a regular basis. I've been studying, practicing, and teaching NLP for years, and I have had to deal with a lot of passive-aggressive people. And I will also admit and confess that I too have acted in passive-aggressive ways. I really don't know anyone who hasn't to some extent. By the end of this video, you will be aware of two language patterns from the NLP meta model that will bring your awareness to when someone is acting passive-aggressively, and I will show you how to counter that behavior, how to counter it through your language. Now, it's really important that I also make clear that just because someone is using these language patterns, this does not mean that they're being passive-aggressive. These are language patterns that we all use, and you'll recognize them pretty easily. You've used them too. So it's not to say that just because they're using these language patterns that this must mean that they're being passive-aggressive or that they're passive-aggressive people. That's just simply not true. However, if you suspect someone of being passive-aggressive, then you listen for these patterns, and if you catch these patterns, this will confirm your hunch about that person, and it will also enable you to counter the passive-aggressive behavior that they're directing toward you. Before we get into this, I'm also curious about you. I love hearing from my viewers. What kinds of passive-aggressive people have you encountered, and how did you deal with that? So let me know in the comments right down here below. I will respond to you. Now, like I said, these language patterns come from the meta model. And if you're interested in learning the first NLP model, which is the meta model, which I also think happens to be probably the most important model to learn, which most NLP students, when they do an NLP training, they just kind of skip past this model. And I was told right from the beginning, really learn this model because most people skip it and because it is such an important model. So if you want to learn more about this, I will leave a link in the description. You click on that link and you can get access to a PDF that give you the meta model patterns. And so you can look at them, start to learn them. The first pattern that I'm going to talk about comes from the group of patterns called distortions. So there's distortions, there's deletions, and there's generalizations. And actually, everything in NLP is based off of those three things: distortion, deletion, and generalization, because that is how we take the information that is happening all around us, that is coming in through our five senses, and that's how we make sense of it. And that's how we create our internal maps. But I could go into this, but that would be a different video. And I have made lots of videos about that. I'll link some of them here also in the description below, and then also to this corner right here. So loss performative is basically a value judgment that is made when the person making the value judgment is nowhere to be found. And the idea behind such a statement is that it's something that everyone agrees with, like it's something God has said, or like it's some sort of universal truth that cannot be questioned. And that's why these can be very powerful if you just allow this to be said and to not counter it. This can get into your unconscious and you just go along with it and just believe it. And passive-aggressive people like using these kinds of statements because it's a way of detaching themselves from it, and it's as if this is what everyone thinks anyway. And so it's not on them. And this is very passive-aggressive because remember, we're talking about passive-aggressive, not overtly aggressive. So it's a passive way of sort of slipping in this judgment about you without you being able to counter it, without you being able to question it, because it's just absolutely true and we all know that it is. But now you're going to know how to catch that. So here are some examples of how somebody might use loss performative. If someone says, ungrateful people don't get what they want. Okay, so see if you can catch where the loss performative is there. Ungrateful people don't get what they want. Well, who's making that judgment? Now, we could go into whether or not that is actually true or not. That's kind of that's a little bit different. I know plenty of ungrateful people who get what they want all the time. So we could challenge it that way. But if someone's being passive-aggressive toward you and they make a statement like that, it probably comes from saying something along the lines of, you're not grateful to me for all that I do. And oftentimes a lot of passive aggressive behavior, a lot of narcissism, which a lot of narcissists use passive aggressive behavior. They'll try to position themselves as being better than you and that you owe them something. They're better than you and they tolerate you. So they might say something along the lines of, you're not grateful for all that I do, and ungrateful people don't get what they want. So the ungrateful people don't get what they want. That is a statement without the performer of that. So they can maybe own the fact that they're saying that you're not grateful to them. They may own that, but then they take it a step further and say, and we all know, so to speak, they're not really saying that, they're leaving that part out, but they're basically saying, everyone agrees, everyone knows, including you, that ungrateful people don't get what they want. Let's try another example. It's bad to be disagreeable. Okay, so there's usually multiple meta-model patterns going on in one sentence. And again, I just want to bring our attention to the lost performative. So now that you've had one example, you probably can spot this one a little bit easier. And then, of course, there's some other things going on here, like presupposition. If a person was to say something like that to you, they're probably presupposing that you're being disagreeable. And oftentimes, we just kind of accept that. These patterns fly below radar, and we just sort of accept it. And so we could argue at that level. You could say, I'm not being disagreeable, but as soon as you say that, it sounds like you're being disagreeable. So we could shift this, though, to get away from the presupposition and go more toward the lost performative. So if they're saying it's bad to be disagreeable, you can then start by calling out the lost performative. Well, who is saying that it's bad to be disagreeable? It's a judgment call. It's a value call, right? It's a value judgment. But who's saying it? Is it they saying it, or is it someone else who's saying that? But again, that's what the lost performative does. It sort of indicates that it's just universally true and unquestioned or unquestionable. And so this is when people start to actually believe from that passive aggressive person, oh, okay, yeah, I'm being disagreeable and it's bad to be disagreeable. Okay, well, I need to stop whatever it is that I'm doing. And maybe I'm just a bad person. So be careful of a statement like that. Another one might be, your questions are disrespectful. So while it is possible for questions to be disrespectful, in general, I don't find questions to overall be disrespectful. And I really encourage people to ask questions. There's nothing wrong with asking questions. And I have people sometimes who apologize in advance for asking me a question. And I always tell them, I say, there's no reason to apologize, because if you're asking me, then you're giving me the opportunity to say no. So if you ask me a question I don't like, or that you might worry is disrespectful, I don't have to answer your question. So don't ever be afraid to ask questions, or don't ever be afraid to ask for what it is that you want. Okay, that's a little bit of a different topic here, but just by saying your questions are disrespectful, that is a lost performative, because it is, once again, a value judgment, but we don't know who's making the value judgment. It's left open, so then we're sort of left to assume that it's just true and it's unquestioned, but of course, that is not true either. Anything can be questioned. Okay, so how would you counter these three patterns? For the lost performative, it's actually very, very simple. You just ask them according to who. Who is saying that? Who believes that? So if someone is telling you something like, ungrateful people don't get what they want, you could say, according to who? According to who ungrateful people don't get what they want? I know plenty of ungrateful people who get what they want. So who is saying that? Imagine the look on the person's face who's being passive aggressive, who's saying a statement like that to you, and then you just turn it around and say, according to who? Who says that? Who believes that? And then now they're going to be reeling backwards. And they might say something like, well, I'm saying that. And then it puts them back in the spotlight. And passive aggressive people do not like this. The whole idea of being passive aggressive is to get away from it. So chances are they're not going to say that. And if they do say that, chances are they're probably not such a passive aggressive person. They don't mind taking responsibility for the statement. So that's a different kind of personality. It's a different kind of person to deal with. But the passive aggressive person, if they're truly passive aggressive, will do almost anything to keep out of the line of fire. So when you ask them according to who, chances are they're going to shrink away from this. And if you're catching them make a lot of these types of statements and you keep challenging them on it, chances are they're going to get away from you. They're going to realize that they can't manipulate you using passive aggressive behavior, and they're probably going to want to get away from you. Now, that same challenge really works for the other two statements. It's bad to be disagreeable and your questions are disrespectful. I would basically say the same thing to both of those statements. According to who are my questions disrespectful? According to who is it bad to be disagreeable? Again, you're taking it and putting it back on them. That tell me who said that, tell me who believes that, or just own it, that you're the one who is making that value judgment, making it sound like it's just a universal truth when it absolutely is not. The second pattern is lack of a referential index. Now, it sounds big. It's not. This is not a difficult pattern at all. And this one falls under the category of deletion. So unlike the lost performative, there is an indication of either someone or even a group of people, but it's unspecified who that person is or who that group of people is. So in other words, this information is deleted out. So one thing you're going to find with passive aggressive people is that they will try to use consensus against you. So if they're not using a universal, unquestionable truth against you, then they will try to make it seem like, well, everybody agrees with them. So it's not them, it's not all on them, it's everybody thinks this, or a majority of people think this, or someone who's unspecified, who is an authority, thinks this, and it somehow goes against you. So again, passive aggressive people don't like to be in the line of fire. They don't like the attention on them. So they look for allies, they look for consensus. So one way this might come out, or you might have heard something similar to this, is a person comes to you and says, I told some friends what you said, and they laughed. So what is that person doing there? They're getting consensus. Friends, well, we don't even know how many friends. There could be many, many friends, and that's sort of the way that they're implying it. So it's not just me who thinks what you said is bad or humiliating or silly or stupid. I spoke to some friends. I got consensus from other people. Other people have backed this up. Another one of these statements could be something like in the workplace, somebody says to you, coworkers have lost confidence in you, or coworkers have lost confidence in your work. Okay, again, we're indicating a group of people, coworkers. They're not saying how many, and they're not saying specifically who. So it's hard to know, well, do I even care if that particular coworker, if they're even telling the truth? Who is this person who has lost confidence in me, or who is this group of people who have lost confidence in me? How many coworkers are we talking about, and are they the ones who matter? And then yet another one, which is even more vague than coworkers, is people don't like it when you ask for what you want. Yet again, we're indicating there are people, and again, it's a group. And for lost performative to work, it doesn't necessarily have to be a group of people, but oftentimes passive aggressive people will use a group because it's better, it's more consensus. So it doesn't have to be a group, it doesn't have to be plural, but often it is. So once again, how would you counter this? So if someone is telling you that they told some friends what you said and they laughed, you could say, which friends? Are these people that I know? How many are there? So challenge them on it, get specific. And chances are they're lying if they're truly passive aggressive. So if you ask them that, you're going to see real fast they're going to backtrack, because then they're going to have to start making stuff up, and making stuff up is a bad place to be. And then you're also calling them out, and you're putting the spotlight on them, and you're asking them for more information. If it is true and they are able to say, well, some close friends of mine, but I don't want to say their names, especially if you do know who they are. I don't want to name names. Then at that point I would say, well, how am I supposed to validate that or take that or value that in any way if I don't know who the person is? Because I can't value everyone's opinion of me, or I can't value everyone's opinion of what I say, because everybody's going to have a different opinion, and I can't please everybody. If it's someone whose opinion I do value, then that would mean something to me. So you're going to completely destroy this person's tactic here. You're going to completely destroy this aggressive behavior that they're directing toward you when you do this. And of course, it's going to work much the same way for the other lost performative statements that we've already used here. If somebody says, coworkers have lost confidence in you, again, you say which coworkers and how many of them. And just see how quickly they try to come up with something, because you're really going to put them on the spot there. And again, if they say, well, I don't want to say because, you know them and they told me in confidence, something like that. And you say, okay, well, I'm sorry, I cannot value that statement whatsoever, because if I don't know who these people are, I don't know whether or not I value what they think about me or what they think about my work. And then last but not least, if someone's saying something like people don't like it when you ask for what you want, you just say, well, which people? Who thinks it's bad to ask for what you want? I saw this guy's YouTube video, and he's made several videos where he says you absolutely should ask for what it is that you want. Why? Because when you ask the person, you're giving the person the opportunity to say no. So you could say something like that to them. You could say which people, how many people. You could really just blow this apart. And that's the whole idea, is to recognize these patterns and to challenge them. And when you challenge them, it will fall apart. And even better is more than likely the person will back off of you immediately. And not only in that moment, but they're likely to back off for good, especially if you keep doing this. The idea behind passive aggressive behavior is it's a tactic, it's a strategy for someone to get what they want and preserve their ego at the same time. And if you keep challenging them like this and exposing them, then this works so much against what it is they're trying to do and the strategy that they're trying to use that they will get away from you. Like I said at the beginning of this video, if you would like to learn more about the meta model, go to the description right down here, click that link and get yourself a free copy of that PDF that I mentioned where I show you the other meta model language patterns. If you like this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up. And if you haven't already, make sure you click that subscribe button and click the bell so you'll be notified when I put new videos out, which is typically on Wednesdays and Saturdays. Last but not least, if you can think of a friend or a family member who would benefit from this video, make sure you share it with them. Take care.